No, you can't do cyanotype on vitrified porcelain. Or can you? When I first tried to sunprint, I didn't bother looking for a course or instructions. Instead, I just went for it. And since I love the feel of vitrified porcelain in jewelry, this is what I used as a substrate. And it worked. It worked pretty well. And then it didn't work. And then it worked again. This was the moment when I started researching, finally, what other people were doing. I saw all those comments saying you can only do cyanotype printing on bisque ceramics, which makes total sense, except at this point I knew that it wasn't exactly true. So in this video, I'm going to try to figure out the reason for the inconsistency of my process and hopefully maybe improve my technique, but also share it with you guys. The tricky part about applying cyanotype to vitrified ceramics is that the surface is non-porous. It doesn't take in liquid, the solution just stays on top and it gets washed off easily. So I had a brief discussion with ChatGPT asking it how I could improve the adhesion of the solution to the surface. It suggested trying white glue or something similar, so I thought I'd test it. I prepared 3 pairs of porcelain earring blanks. The first I left untreated, just vitrified porcelain, by which I mean porcelain fired at high temperature, which makes it watertight. The second I covered with a thin layer of a liquid intended for gold gilding. I just had it at home, so I thought I could try it too. And the third pair I covered with white glue, or what you may call Elmer's glue, which is another name for PVA glue as far as I know. Here I'm applying the coatings and then I left them to dry. Once the pieces were dry, I prepared the cyanotype solution. If you've done cyanotype before, you know it usually comes as 2 components that are mixed together in equal amounts. That's what I did here, preparing it indoors with shutters closed, since it was a sunny day outside and I didn't want UV light to activate the solution too early. I mixed it well and then I applied it with a brush over my porcelain pieces. As expected, it doesn't soak into the piece at all. The day when I made this video was hot, so the solution dried out relatively fast, but if you touched it or rubbed it too much with a brush, the layer came right off. Still, I tried to apply as much of the cyanotype solution as I could. I brushed on 1 layer, let it dry, then I added a second. Honestly, I could not see much difference between the 3 sets. If anything, the glue and the gilding base held the dye even less well. Sorry, ChatGPT, your idea didn't work. Once the pieces were dry, I applied my design, which was a small digital drawing of mine, printed on a transparent film. In cyanotype, the black parts of the design block sunlight, and the surface underneath will remain white, while the exposed areas should become blue. I exposed the porcelain pieces in the bright afternoon sun for about 7 minutes, and then I rinsed with water. First result, the untreated sample, washed off completely. Here goes the second with the gilding base coating, and it was no better. And the white glue sample, also no good. None of them held the image. One could conclude that the glue didn't help at all, and maybe I needed something else to attach the dye. But at this point I realized that I probably did it all wrong from the start by applying too much cyanotype solution. In fact, I think similar things would happen if you put too much of it on a paper base. It will wash off upon the water rinse. So I repeated the process with just an uncoated porcelain base, making one change. I applied the solution in a single thin brush stroke. No over-application, no layering, no drops. I avoided brushing over the same spot twice, and I tried removing the excess liquid as dry and thin as possible. After exposure and rinsing, the difference is clear compared to the earlier attempt here, where everything washed off. This time, the print stayed. It worked beautifully. Now, a warning, the dye stays on vitrified porcelain, but only as long as you don't touch it. You can rinse gently with water and it will hold, but if you rub it with a brush, cloth, or especially with your finger, It comes off immediately. I actually wanted to demonstrate it here, but I loved the result so much that I didn't dare. This is why if you're happy with your result, you need to seal it. And if you don't like it, you can wash it, dry it, and try again, which I think is pretty handy. What I did here, I left the pieces to dry completely and then I sprayed them with a clear varnish. Spraying part is important because if you apply the varnish with a brush, there is a risk of ruining the image. I used the matte varnish to mimic the natural porcelain finish. You can use glossy varnish, of course, to imitate the glaze if you want it shiny. Here's the final piece. As you can see, with sealing, it doesn't rub off and the print becomes durable. So yes, cyanotype on vitrified porcelain is possible. It is delicate and you need to seal it, but it works. Now, I'm not a cyanotype specialist. I probably do it only a couple of times a year. So if you know of better tutorials or techniques, I'd love to see them. Please share your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. And thank you for watching.